Welcome back, listeners. I'm back with another suspense story. The title is Bristol Murder. It was written by Philip Prowse. Bristol Murder is a long storybook, students, containing nearly 80 pages. Therefore, you will receive it in parts. This is part 1. Bristol Murder is a story full of deep suspense. There is a murder, and you have to find out who was murdered and who was the murderer. The motive of this story is to challenge your English skills, how much of the English language you already understand. The level of English language into this story would be intermediate. Let's now start Bristol Murder Case. Chapter 1, Early Morning. It was early one morning in October. Mrs. Jones was in the kitchen making breakfast. She had been up since 5 o'clock. Mrs. Jones looked at her watch. It was time to wake Peter. Peter, Peter, it's 6 o'clock. Get up, she shouted up the stairs. Peter was already awake. What? He asked. It's 6 o'clock, his mother shouted. Oh, okay, Peter replied. He could smell the breakfast which his mother had prepared for him. He got out of bed slowly and went to the bathroom. Peter, his mother shouted again. Yes, Mom, it's okay, I'm up, Peter shouted back through the door. He washed quickly because it was cold and ran back to his bedroom. Peter, your breakfast ready, Mrs. Jones continued. Yes, Mom, I'm coming, Peter replied. As he was dressing, he ran down the stairs and went through the sitting room to the kitchen. Oh, here you are, his mother said. Hurry up or your breakfast will go cold. Peter sat down and ate his breakfast. Do you want some more tea? Peter's mother asked. Yes, please, Peter replied with a smile. Where are you going today? Mrs. Jones asked as she was pouring out the tea. I don't know, said Peter. What's the time? It's 6:30, answered Mrs. Jones, looking at her watch. I must go, Peter said, finishing up his cup of tea. Thanks for breakfast. What time will you come this evening? Asked Mrs. Jones anxiously. Peter stood up. I don't know. If it's a long drive, I won't be back until tomorrow. Take care of yourself, Peter, his mother said, giving him his coat. Don't worry, Mum, I will, said Peter. Then he quickly put his coat on and went out into the hall. Goodbye, his mother shouted. See you, Mum. He went out of the front door into the street. He walked along to the end of the street and turned right. As he turned the corner, he saw the bus and started to run. He ran as fast as he could and got on the bus just before it left. Corporation Street, please, he said to the driver. 50 pence, please, replied the driver. Peter paid and sat down. The bus drove quickly through the empty streets and was soon in the Corporation Street. Peter got off and walked along the street to Universal Transport Limited. He went through the gate and into the office. Good morning, Mr. James, said Peter cheerfully as he entered the office. Good morning, Peter. How are you? Said Mr. James, looking up from his desk. Mr. James decided where the lorries went every day and gave the drivers their instructions. He was a short, fat man aged about 45. He was popular with the drivers because he had been a driver himself once, so Mr. James understood the drivers' problems. I'm fine, thanks, replied Peter. Good, said Mr. James. I want you to take a load of biscuits to Manchester today. You can stay the night there and come back tomorrow. Right, answered Peter. Is the lorry ready? No, Peter, not yet. Can you help load it, please? Asked Mr. James. Peter went outside and walked over to his lorry. He helped put the boxes of biscuits in the lorry and then drove it to the gate. The man at the gate gave Peter the address for the biscuits in Manchester and asked Peter to sign some papers. Peter thanked him, got back into the lorry, and drove out of the gate. It was still only 7:30 and Brightwater was quiet. He drove along Corporation Street and through the center of the town. The town was empty and all the shops were still closed. Peter drove on and soon passed people leaving their houses and hurrying to work. Peter took the road for Bristol, and by 8 o'clock he had left Brightwater and was out in the country. Here, listeners, I tell you the meaning of country here means the rural area, out of the township or out of the city area. Out in the country means he entered the rural area. He turned on the radio and listened. It will be cold in most of England today, and there will be probably heavy rain. That's the end of the weather forecast. Now it's 8 o'clock and time for the news. A middle-aged man was murdered in Bristol late last night. The police would like to talk to a boy of about 16 who... Peter turned off the radio. He was always unlucky. Today he had to drive all the way to Manchester and it was going to rain. As he was thinking about the weather, the first few drops of rain started to fall. It was still raining when Peter reached Bristol. It was after 9 o'clock now and all of the shops were open. There were lots of people and cars and he had to drive slowly. He took the road to the north and was through the town in half an hour. Not bad, he thought. I'll get to Birmingham by lunchtime. As Peter looked out ahead, he saw a boy standing by the side of the road. It was difficult to see in the rain, but the boy looked about 16. He was wearing a red jersey and jeans. He was hitchhiking. Here I tell you the meaning of hitchhiking, listeners. Hitchhiking means he was traveling by asking for lifts from people. So he was hitchhiking and was holding out his hand to ask for a lift. Peter slowed down and stopped. The boy ran up and opened the door. Where are you going? The boy asked. Manchester, said Peter. Can you give me a lift? The boy asked anxiously. Yeah, get in. As he spoke, Peter leaned over and helped the boy into the lorry. The boy closed the door. He was very, very wet. Peter drove off. Where are you going? Asked Peter. I don't know, said the boy. You don't know? Peter repeated in a surprised voice. No, I've run away from home. The boy spoke quietly. What? Said Peter. The lorry was very noisy and it was difficult to talk. I said, I've run away from home. The boy repeated his words loudly, but Peter still could not hear. What? Peter asked again. I said, I have left home. I'm not going to go back, the boy shouted. Why? Asked Peter. We had an argument, that's all, the boy replied slowly. What's your name? Inquired Peter. John Stevens. What's yours? The boy asked. Peter, replied the lorry driver. Well, John, do you feel like a cup of tea? Yes, please. The boy smiled with pleasure at the idea of a cup of tea. There is a cafe just ahead and we'll stop there, said Peter, pointing to the direction of the cafe as he spoke. The lorry stopped outside the cafe. It was still raining heavily and John and Peter ran inside the cafe to have their tea. Well, here comes the end to chapter number 1. And you have already listened about a murder in Bristol town of England. Is John, the boy who has taken lift in Peter's lorry, is he the murderer? Is he connected in somewhat to the murder of a middle-aged man in Bristol? We will continue and let's find out some more details in chapter number 2. It was warm in the cafe and Peter went up to the counter where a girl was serving. John took a seat at a table. "Two teas, please," said Peter to the girl at the counter. "Here you are, love," said the girl as she posed 2 cups of tea towards Peter. "That's 90 pence, please." Peter gave her the money and carried the cups of tea over the table where John was sitting. "Thank you," said John. The tea was hot and sweet and warmed both of them up. "So you've left home then," said Peter. "That's right," John replied. "Why?" Peter asked. "I told you, we had an argument," said the boy. Peter smiled. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to." "I want to," said John. "I must talk to someone." "Tell me what happened then," said Peter in a kind voice. "Well, you see," John began, "my parents are dead and I live with my uncle." "I live with my uncle," Peter interrupted the boy. "In Bristol?" "Yeah, that's right," said John. "My uncle has always been kind to me, but he never lets me do anything." "What do you mean?" asked Peter. The boy pushed back his chair. "Well, he never lets me go out in the evenings." Peter nodded. "Why not?" "Oh," the boy said, "he says that I must stay in and study instead. He makes me stay in and study every night while my friends are out enjoying themselves." "I see," said Peter as he drank his tea. "That's why you ran away, is it?" John shook his head. "Not really. It was because of what happened last night." "What did happen?" asked Peter, watching the boy's face closely. "I told my uncle that I wanted to go to the cinema with some of my friends," John explained. "But my uncle wouldn't let me go and told me to study instead." "Yes," said Peter, encouraging the boy to continue his story. "When he wasn't looking, I ran out and went to the cinema with my friends. When I came back, my uncle was waiting for me. He was very, very angry and asked me where I had been. I told him I had been to the cinema. When I told him that I had been to the cinema, my uncle hit me in the face." John paused to drink his tea. "Does he often hit you?" asked Peter. "When he gets angry. Last night he hit me very hard and I got angry and I hit him back," replied John. Peter's face was serious. "What did your uncle do then?" he asked. "Nothing. You see, I must have hit him very hard because he fell on the floor and didn't move." John stopped speaking and looked at the table. "What did you do then?" asked Peter quietly. "I was..." John hesitated. "I was afraid and so I ran out." "Where did you go?" inquired Peter. "I can't remember. When I came back an hour later, there were several police cars outside the home. All the lights in the house were switched on. Then a policeman came out of the house and saw me. 'There he is!' he shouted and ran after me. I ran away and the policeman didn't catch me. I slept in the bus station and started hitchhiking early this morning." "Well," said Peter, "you certainly had a busy night. Why did you run away from the police?" "Because they wanted to catch me and put me in prison," answered John. "But why do you think they wanted to put you in prison?" continued Peter. "Because my uncle must have telephoned the police. He must have told them to catch me because I had hit him." "Do you want some more tea?" asked Peter. John nodded. "Yes, please." "Here is 90 pence," said Peter, handing John the money. "Can you go and get 2 more teas?" John went to get the tea. There were a lot of people in the cafe and he had to wait. Peter picked up a newspaper which someone had left on the table. Peter looked at the front page, and on the front page there was a headline: "Man found dead. The body of Mr. Robert Stevens." Remember the name, Robert Stevens, and the name of the boy is John Stevens. The body of Mr. Robert Stevens, 44, was found in his home at 24 Devonshire Road, Bristol last night. When Peter had read this, he quickly put the newspaper in his pocket. A minute later, John returned with the tea. "Was there anything interesting in the paper?" John asked. "No," said Peter. drink up your tea because we must leave as soon as possible." They finished their tea quickly and walked out to the lorry. Peter started the engine and drove off. It had stopped raining and the sun was shining. It was now warm inside the lorry, and John began to feel sleepy. "If you want to sleep," Peter said, "you can get into the back. The lorry isn't quite full and there is an old coat of mine there you can lie on." "Thanks," said John. "That would be good." Peter stopped the lorry and John got into the back. They drove off again. Perhaps now Peter was a bit nervous because he doubted that John could be the murderer. Listeners, do you also doubt John could be the murderer? Well, I don't know. I really don't know who is the murderer. Whether John really the murderer is. Anyway, there were only a few cars and soon the lorry was near Tewkesbury. Tewkesbury is a town. So soon the lorry was near Tewkesbury. Suddenly Peter saw a police car stopped on the road ahead. As he drove closer, a policeman walked out in front of the lorry and held his hand up, which means he was asking Peter to stop the lorry. Here comes the end of chapter 2, listeners. What do you think? Do you think now police is going to catch the boy in the back of the lorry and going to put him behind the bars in the prison, suspecting him to be the murderer? Is the story so easy? Well, I really don't know whether police are going to arrest the boy and going to put him behind the bars for murdering his uncle. We will find out more about in the next chapter. That would be the second part of this murder mystery. That's it for now. I hope you will wait for the second part, and for that you have to subscribe the channel and please press the bell icon so that you can get the notification as the second part I release. That's it for now. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.